we don't actually want to be aware of what every cell in our body is doing and have to think about every single breath. It's nice that we get in there and meditate and concentrate on our breath, something that is normally an autonomic response. But um besides that, there like you can't possibly, you don't want to be in charge of all of the blood that is going through your veins. Sure, you can,
Sure.
you can sit and you can meditate, and if you want to sleep at night, maybe you can imagine your extremities getting warmer and the heat leaving your core, and which is a part of the natural sleep process, and that might hasten the act of sleep because it's cooling your core down, and you can kind of insert your consciousness in these domains that it doesn't normally have a large role in, and that's really cool and that's really interesting. But you aren't sitting around going, fingernails grow a little bit for me today. And we don't want to do that. And more to a much more relatable level, there are a lot of times that we pay to be surprised. There are people that come to my show to hear jokes that throw them for a loop, that deliver an unexpected thing. People love roller coasters where they're giving away control to some crazy machine that's flipping them around everywhere. We love surprise parties. We like when we go on a date and someone surprises us with some plan. And there's all of these domains that we actually don't want control over. And
Sure.
that's really interesting to me, is separating what do so when we're talking about choice and free will,
What
what are
do
we
we
actually
choose?
talking about, and where is the choice important to us?
I would say the obvious choices are sort of like directions we go in life, relationships we choose to start or end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, there's smaller, choices, but I think that's what most of us think about is the big ones. Like, what do I want to work on, not work on? Even like, what words do I want to say or not say? Like when we catch ourselves, like, I want to be more thoughtful with my speech. Right now, I
Yeah.
don't want to gossip. You're internally making these with your inner monologue, perhaps,
And how
or
much
you're getting,
control do you have over that?
well, I mean, it feels like, you're making a decision. I mean, yes, it might be, it might be influenced on, like, of course, how you're brought up and the environment you're in that moment, how tired you are, what you've eaten. You're a chemical soup as a being that is influencing every decision you make. But to me, it's influencing. Like there's still that spark of something that can always say no
Yes.
or a yes. I mean, I can always override to a certain level. There is an edge where it will always be something,
I I
always.
I think that I'm in agreement with you. I think that I disagree with my scientific hero in that, like he is pretty, puts his foot down, like,
I
nah.
would say it's very consistent. I'm sure there's a lot of evidence to say like, it typically will go a certain direction. I'd be like, probably because we're quite asleep and we're not that aware generally.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
look, if
And
I were designing this and I was a god, if I'm God, I think it is amazingly interesting to say, hey, why don't we break ourselves apart and incarnate into these animals? And
mhm.
one way of analogy of looking at that is like, if we're human as the god, and you're like, what if we could be a dog? Wouldn't that be cool? But you'll still be the spark of yourself, but you're going to be a dog. So you're going to lick your
Mhm.
balls and you're going to do all the dog things that are just natural dog things, just like we
Oh,
have
you
natural
don't know
human
how
things.
great licking your balls is.
Making a meal out of the balls.
Your judgment is
Who
like,
said
well,
it's
you maybe
judgment?
you
I
haven't
said you
licked
will
your
do it.
balls. And it's also, I also like that dogs need to get in the butthole. The dogs have a fantastic sense of smell, like
Yeah.
incredible sense of smell. It's part of it, it's part of how we've bred them. It's part of how they evolved. Everything else, and they can't be 2 inches away from a butthole. No, they
The
need to
nose
be
is in it.
right there. It's amazing. And it must just smell fantastic.
Well, I don't know if you've ever I when I had a puppy, it was spayed, and something about that, I don't know, affected the dog's hormones where
Sure.
if it got really excited, its anal glands would leak. And I don't
Mhm.
know if you're familiar with a dog's anal glands, but as
I
if a
dated a veterinarian for years,
so
and
you know about anal
oh
glands.
my God, she would get home. I
Did
was
you
sitting there
express them at work?
writing dumb jokes, and like I maybe have a beer cracked already by the time she gets home. She gets home, she's covered in anal glands.
It's the
She
worst
had some
smell.
dog dye on her, and
Ah.
she's like, "You've just been doing what all day? You're on your fourth beer." And I'm like, "Let me run this bit by you."
Well, anal glands. I mean, if you, it's
Yeah.
like, how could you make, feces smell worse? It's like, well, add in an anal gland. And
Yeah.
that's what the dog is smelling
Yeah.
and that's
Love
why they
it.
smell the piles of shit because it expresses a bit of that, and it's sort of like their signature scent. And
Yeah,
for
yeah.
them, it's a wonderful, complex,
Yeah.
name tag, and,
Worse,
and so
worse than that. There's potentially some elements of a dog's natural diet that's missing in traditional dog
you
food
don't say,
that you
yeah.
can find in feces, and so
Oh,
that might also explain some of their just having to eat their own shit to like get the nutrients that they need.
but the
Speaking of free will,
the point of this was me. I'm thinking like, so just zoom that out to a human. It's like the things we make a meal out of, and all of our
of
animal. I mean,
course.
we have such more complexity of the propensities of what it means to be human being that makes it so interesting and in some ways a rich challenge. This is more metaphysical, but to think like if there was any choice at all to do this thing that we are, if there was any purpose to it, it wasn't just random, things coming together, and this is just random consciousness, then this would be a very interesting choice to make because it's sort of like even if you decided to be a tree, it's like, well, a tree does a lot of things that it does, but how do you play with that in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I should say that I am really um how do I say this? I am really uncertain about what my idea of random even means, and I'm really uncertain about how we're defining free will. And so much of that is because have I ever told you about my dumb beer mustaches that I used to sell? I'll recap in case I've said it before. I just have I love this story so much. I got into there's a period of time I had a lot of I've always had back and forth relationship with alcohol, and when you're in a comedy club, your whole job is to sell drinks. And so I had these dumb plastic beer mustaches. You'd clip them onto a beer bottle. It would look like you have had a mustache. Ha ha ha! Isn't that fun? And so I had 8 different colors of these things. And if you're going to get into the beer mustache game, but what you're going to find out in a hurry is that the black ones sell the most, the pink ones second most, and then after that, it's a real mixed bag. Yeah, you got brown, purple, orange, red, blue, and green. You can go like, hey, Christmas is around the corner. Get a red and green one, and you can clip both of them on, and just there's a lot of ways you could prime people. St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner. Get a green one. Here's your local sports team. I got you're into the Vikings. Here's a purple mustache. There's a lot of ways you could prime people easily into buying
Sure.
things. And then there were these, and one for five, three for 10, seven for $20. I mean, how do you not just get seven?
How do
I
you not?
mean, how do
How
you
do you
not?
not?
And so now you get to a part in your career where you got like no money, and you're going from town to town and paycheck to paycheck, and you're just sitting on like, you ordered way too many purple beer mustaches, and you got like 600 of these damn things and hardly any of the other ones, and you need to get rid of these purple beer mustaches, and they just aren't moving. How do you do it? And one of the things that I figured out, I had them all in kind of a fishing box, with all these different colors. And I just, so there'd be like a stack of 20 in each little compartment, nice and organized. And I figured out that if I just took most of the ones out of the purple compartment, it just made them seem like, oh, people take purple. This is a short interaction. Most people are just looking to. That's the other thing with free will is like, well, it depends on the context. Is someone just trying to support you and throw a little money your way, and they don't give a shit about the color of their
Yeah.
dumb beer mustache that they're going to lose soon? Or are they purchasing a new car, which also, like, you might be tricked by just the smell of the car into the complexity of the decision that you're making, that like, well, this smells good, easy enough, and you think you're evaluating all these other things, but you aren't. And that's like well tested. So anyhow, what was interesting about this was I was able to trigger the cognitive bias of scarcity. People would think, oh, I better get a purple beer mustache.
Because
I'm
they're
gonna get
running
one of
out.
the last
Yeah.
ones. Yeah, and they're so popular. You got social proof because other people have clearly liked the purple beer mustache, and so you're making this quick decision, and that's not what's interesting. What's interesting was anytime people bought one, and they'd be flying off the shelves. I just had a pocket full of purple beer mustaches. I just keep on reloading the thing. And what was interesting is that if they bought one, I'd be like, "Oh, why'd you pick purple?" And no one ever said like, "Well, there's social proof here. They're clearly popular. I wanted to get the last one." Some people would be like, "Oh, I wanted to get it before I was gone," or something like that. But usually, people had a story immediately. They would say, "Well, my first car was purple. My daughter's favorite car was purple. I've always liked purple. Purple's my favorite color." Bullshit. I haven't sold one of these purple goddamn beer mustaches in 2 goddamn months. You're telling me they're flying off the shelves now just because of a couple little things that I tweaked? And so I don't know what is free will in that scenario where like they did have a choice, but also their conscious explanation of why they made the choice that they made is this ad hoc, uh, kind of grandiose story that has absolutely nothing to do with the environmental primings that were provided. This conditional, like, well, easy to predict, very falsifiable, which make falsifiable predictions in life if you can. And so, I don't know where free will falls into that, and how much of it is that. So the two biggest components, I think, in this discussion that we would need to think about is that, clearly, to me, and this is a lot of Sapolsky's work, is that the two biggest stressors, especially for a modern human, but in all of life, is lack of predictability and lack of control.